I appreciate you asking. I follow two groups more closely than anybody else, and that's the insurers, the guys who are actually insuring the tankers that are trying to get through, and they have so many concerns. Obviously, the first and foremost is for the safety of the crew, safety of the seafarers, and as long as they're, seeing the U.S. Navy shoot at ships,
Yep.
they're not sending anybody through. So that's the first and foremost before you even get to the second order issues about paying the Ayatollah, which various nations are just not going to comply with, especially if they're in the Western banking system. So that's one of the big ones that I like to get from a real boots on the ground understanding. And then the secondary group that is the most informed is obviously the military. So I spoke with some folks across military bases in the Navy in northern Florida last week. And it's really interesting that there are 3,000 rapid deployments being delivered across naval bases, showing that we are still continuing a major military buildup in the Strait of Hormuz, in that general Gulf region, the largest since 9/11, and it continues to grow. So when you see this dichotomy of the market spiking because the president's saying some positive stuff, but then you also know that we're seeing, 10,000 Marines and Navy and Army folks, the 82nd Airborne, being deployed over there, you're getting two very conflicting signals, and the risk is very on.
Yep, mixed messages for sure. So, Henrietta, I just want to talk domestically for a moment, because this sort of gets lost in the sauce. But are we still wondering about a fiscal stimulus package, and what's the likelihood that that does happen, this year?
Yeah, for all of us budget nerds out there, we're going to find out tomorrow. So Lindsey Graham, the Senate Budget Committee chairman, is expected to put out his fiscal year 26 reconciliation plan, his budget. And my understanding right now is that it's only going to be about $75 billion. That should tell you a lot. It tells you that Republicans are expecting to lose the House and they're fearful of losing the Senate, because they're funding ICE and DHS for 3.5 years, removing any optionality for Democrats to lord something over the president in the back half of his term. So that's thing number one. But thing number two is that we don't know yet that it's definitely going to be $75 billion. It could easily be 350, 400, $700 billion without really breaking a sweat. If they need to fund the Pentagon, if they need to provide some boost to U.S. consumers, if they want to pass, say, a suspension of the federal gas tax, which Republicans do not have a strong view towards right now. They don't want to do that, though Democrats are already offering that legislation. And individual states across the country, like Georgia and obviously Canada, are passing their own suspensions of the gas tax. So a lot to learn tomorrow in the budget that comes out.
So, Henrietta, as it relates to the war, is Congress even feigning any input here, any sway here, or are they just leaving it to the president and the executive branch?
There are some things that really animate the lawmakers, and there's also a calendar component to this. So I'd start with the first one. Members were really visibly and actively distraught when the president tweeted himself out as Christ the Healer. That does not play well in the Bible Belt, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. I mean, that's what you hear about when you talk about the Strait of Hormuz. People don't know about the Strait. They know that the president is in a fight with the Pope. So that itself is a problem. Then you have the critical sort of like psychological dates that are important. The 60-day marker of the war, which is critical from a war powers resolution standpoint, that's April 29th. Members are aware of those dates. So those war powers resolution votes that we've seen fail 3 or 4 times in the Senate so far, they're going to get more pressure to start to engage. My understanding is the president has until June from the Republican conference, which means he really needs to get through this 2 weeks of session. Then they're on recess for 10 days. So as long as he can get through the next 2 weeks, he'll have another reprieve when they're gone.